Hi Trio Scholars, I'm glad you've joined me for this virtual workshop. In this video, I will provide several resume writing tips and suggestions. Whether you have extensive work history or none at all, I hope you'll walk away from this with confidence in your ability to make a resume that gets you that interview. Before I get into all of that, you might be asking, why do I even need a resume? Most employers ask you a series of questions on an application, and having a resume might feel a little redundant. I'm here to tell you that while that's true, there are several good reasons for creating and updating a resume. First, many employers require or request a resume even if you've completed an application. This might sound silly or be annoying, but it is pretty standard. The truth is, you likely don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It's not uncommon for HR departments to scan for eligible candidates first and only pass on the resume or cover letter to potential supervisors. Other systems might use computer algorithms or other strategies to sift through your application or resume alone. You just don't know how they're using the information. A smart move is to present a good resume anytime the option is available. Second, while we tend to think of a resume for jobs alone, a resume can be used in other areas too. A resume may be requested or required for a scholarship application, internship opportunity, volunteer endeavor, or a letter of recommendation. Having a current resume is a very useful way to share your professional story with others. Third, keeping a resume serves as a very helpful reference point for your own use, especially as you accumulate more relevant experiences. I refer back to my resume anytime I apply for something new or look toward volunteer opportunities. I often forget all that I've done and the dates or years that I completed those things. Having them listed in one place that I can go back to helps me stay on track. With all of that in mind, I encourage you to make a resume and regularly update it. If you're feeling overwhelmed or just want a refresher, keep watching and we'll get into the details. Let's get started with the basics of a resume. Now, I'm going to break things down in a few different ways for you because every person has a unique background and set of skills. If you're a working professional with at least 3 or 4 years of experience, you may not have a lot of difficulty filling up your resume with useful information. But if you're like many students in college, you likely haven't worked full-time for that long or might have gaps in your employment history. Or you might be a professional who is changing careers, which is why you're here at WVC. Whatever your situation, there are some important things that you can include on your resume to make it stand out. Before I get into specific sections that you should include, I want to cover 6 general resume tips that you should keep in mind as you go. Tip number 1, a resume should be easy to read and have consistent formatting. Make things easy for the people reviewing it. If you use bullet points to list job duties, do it for each position. If you make a header bold, make all of your headers that way. Pay attention to the little details because they can make or break your resume. That being said, don't get caught up on formatting. Tip number 2, keep your resume simple and clean. Many employers use computer software to filter out ineligible candidates. These programs don't always understand how to process fancy tables or images. A quick Google search will show you a ton of beautifully formatted options, which are nice to look at, but can sometimes pull focus in the wrong direction. A resume should be clear, concise, and easy for anyone to read. In most situations, you should limit yourself to one well-organized page, though occasionally adding a second isn't always a deal breaker if you have something truly beneficial to add. Tip number 3, tailor your resume for each position. I know this sounds tedious, but it doesn't have to be. If you start with a general resume that includes important information, you can easily make edits for each position. Simply save a new copy for each job and make small adjustments. Include relevant keywords or mention the company by name. Show them that you're applying for their job on purpose. Tip number 4, proofread and screen for errors. If you're following tip number 3, this is especially important. You don't want to submit a resume for company A to their competitors at company B. Doing so will likely get you immediately filtered out. Beyond those issues, carefully look for typos or autocorrect errors. Spell check doesn't always catch grammatical mistakes or misused words. There are many stories out there of people who misspelled their job title or claimed that they had great attention to detail with a typo on the page. Mistakes like this can pull attention away from your strengths. Tip number 5, keep updating your resume as you accomplish new things or reach new milestones. You're a growing, changing person, and your resume should reflect who you are now. And finally, tip number 6, every person and resume is different. Your resume is used to show employers why you're a great fit for their company. Customize and rearrange as needed to suit your goals, achievements, and the potential employer. There isn't a completely universal template out there, so make your resume work for you. With that out of the way, we can get into it. Let's shift gears and talk about the different sections that you should probably include in the framework of your resume. Number 1, a header. Even though you're likely submitting your resume with an online application, you should always make sure you have your name and contact information at the top. As an aside, this is a good rule of thumb for Canvas assignments too. Include your name front and center in big or bold font. Some contact information you should include is your phone number, an email address, and your location. A few notes on this. First, make sure your email address sounds professional. If you don't have a professional sounding email address, it's easy to make one for free on a number of websites. Second, make sure you actually check your voicemail and your email. If you're graduating, don't put down a student email address that you may not have access to in the future. Third, when it comes to putting down the location, I don't recommend putting your full address on here. It's generally a good idea to put down your city and state, but in general, this practice is falling out of style, and I would say this is optional. Additionally, if you have a LinkedIn profile, I highly recommend including the URL in your header. I say this for a few reasons. First, this shows that you're using technology. Many employers are looking for people who are comfortable using computers and different software. Having a LinkedIn account shows that you understand how to use social media in a professional way. Second, you may develop greater connections on LinkedIn and therefore build your professional network. Third, it gives employers an opportunity to see things that don't have a place on your resume. You can include special course projects, small volunteer opportunities, and many other things. Having a well-crafted LinkedIn account can bolster your application in a lot of ways. If you don't have one, I recommend getting familiar with it and reaching out if you'd like help. Number 2, a professional summary. Back in the day, we used an objective section at the top of a resume to emphasize what job we were applying for and why. This practice has become a little out of date in recent years. Instead, you should include a professional summary section at the top of your resume. This section is an opportunity for you to catch an employer's attention. Now, your summary section will look different depending on your experience. So let's break this down. If you are what I'll call an inexperienced applicant who either doesn't have a lot of work history or doesn't necessarily have history related to this position, this section is an opportunity for you to showcase why they should consider you. Use this section to highlight your achievements, accomplishments, and other things you're proud of. List academic achievements or volunteer endeavors. This is an opportunity to briefly catch their attention and tell them to look at your application more closely. If, on the other hand, you're an experienced applicant with several years of work history, you can use this section as an opportunity to highlight your professional accomplishments. This is an opportunity for you to explain how your skills and expertise are going to benefit this company. Sell yourself here and tell them why they need to hire you. Regardless of your experience, here are a couple of key tips in this section. 1, keep it short, 2 to 4 sentences max. Don't include information that doesn't add to your hireability. 2, don't tell employers how this job will benefit you, but focus on how they need you on their team. What attributes will you bring to their workplace? The third section is work experience. If you're an experienced professional, this will likely be the bulk of your resume. In this section, you will want to list relevant positions along with brief descriptions of your job duties. Don't use fancy lingo or inflated language unless it's commonly used. You can add impactful words and craft powerful sentences, but employers should be able to easily understand your duties. Keep sentences concise and relevant. If you have some work history that's more relevant than others, emphasize those areas in your description. It can be tempting to list every task you conducted in a job, but this can be overwhelming and messy. Too much information makes it difficult to read. You want to make the employer's job as easy as possible. Stick to what they need to know. Now, if you've never had a job before or you have limited working experience, this might be the spot where you hit a wall and feel overwhelmed. Don't worry, you can still pull together a solid resume to help you get that job. If you don't have any work history, you can and should supplement with sections highlighting your volunteer experience, education, specialized training, or selected achievements. And this is where I point back to tip number 6 from the start of this video. There isn't one universal system that everyone must follow. Each person and position is different. If you don't have work experience, move your education toward the top. If you haven't had a job but took a class in Microsoft Excel or were the top performer on a class project, you can emphasize these things. Just make sure you're including information that demonstrates qualities an employer might look for, like dedication, work ethic, and perseverance. Number 4, education. All of you are working toward completing a degree or certificate. You can and should highlight this on your resume. If you have a decent GPA, say over a 3.0, highlight that as well. If you've made any honors lists or have any special recognitions, you can also include those here. If you'd like, this is a good spot to also include scholarship awards. When it comes to high school, there are a couple things to consider. Including your high school or GED is especially helpful if you have little or no relevant work experience. It can help fill space and highlight your education. However, if you have some events from high school you'd rather not discuss, such as an academic dismissal, or if you're concerned about disclosing your age, you may consider leaving it off. The fact that you're attending college signals to employers that you have completed high school or its equivalent. There's no rule that says you should or should not include high school. It's a matter of personal preference and judgment. Many people choose to leave it off as they advance in their education, but there's no wrong answer here. Number 5, skills. This section to me is one of the most useful but underutilized. Highlighting hard and soft skills on your resume can sometimes make the difference between getting an interview and being ignored. Let's take a moment to break this down by starting with hard skills. Hard skills are things that you can do that are easily observable or quantifiable. These include things like computer proficiency, expertise with Microsoft Excel, speaking multiple languages, or math skills. Soft skills are things that can't be easily measured, but are just as critical to work success. This includes things like communication skills, teamwork, leadership, and creativity. A good resume will include a mix of both hard and soft skills. One tactic I suggest is taking select keywords from the job description and putting them in this section. If a job posting mentions a need for time management skills and you are good at managing your time, include it on this list. This also helps with that filtering software I talked about earlier and increases the likelihood of getting your resume in front of real people. So I just covered 5 key sections to include on your resume: a header, summary, work experience, education, and skills. But wait, I'm not done just yet. There are a few other common sections that you might want to add to your resume. Volunteering. Employers love to see volunteer work almost as much as employment. This is especially critical if you don't have a lot of work experience. If you haven't volunteered, you need to start looking and get on it. There are a number of volunteer opportunities available, and they can range from regular commitments to one-time events. There's something for everyone, and you don't have to commit beyond your means to make a difference. For example, I dedicate some of my free time to crocheting comfort aids for premature newborns. Trust me, you can find something out there. Certifications. If you have specific certifications or training that don't really fit in your education section, consider devoting a separate section to it. For example, if you're CPR certified, you may want to highlight that fact for your potential employer. Language proficiency. I know I mentioned language briefly in the skills section, but you might consider giving it a special spot on your resume. Understanding more than one language is incredibly valuable and is noteworthy to employers. Consider breaking it down to highlight your proficiency in speaking, reading, and writing. This shows your employers what to expect and draws more attention to this super useful skill. Finally, I want to say that you can create new sections on your resume if you find them appropriate and useful to your application. If you have something unique to share or highlight, it's okay to be creative and unique, but consider your audience and what information you already provided. Don't force new ideas just to stand out. That about does it for this part of the workshop. I hope you learned something new or useful. In the next section, you'll have an opportunity to review an example resume and think about what was done well and what could be improved. To wrap things up, complete the resume activity and tell us how we did to receive credit.